We welcome you. We welcome each of you and the many countries and rich cultures represented here in this cloud to this learning community. We welcome those of you of African descent or Asian descent or European descent, of the First Nations descent in this land and abroad, and people of mixed and multiple descents. We welcome people of all economic backgrounds and current conditions. We welcome your bodies, bodies of all sizes. Okay. Yeah, we welcome your bodies, bodies of all sizes, abilities, and challenges, whether visible or invisible. We welcome those of you who are new to trainings like this one and those with a great deal of related experience. We welcome all ages, from young adults to elders. We welcome all faith traditions, those who identify as spiritual or as mindfulness practitioners, and all the guiding beliefs on how to live our lives. We welcome those who identify as activists and those who don't. We welcome all the languages we bring and the many ways that we speak English. We welcome people of all genders, including people who identify as transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, and everyone for whom those labels don't apply. We welcome all sexual orientations, whether queer or straight, partnered, polyamorous, or asexual. We welcome each of you in all of the rich complexity of your identity, including dimensions we have not mentioned. So, Rumi wrote, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." And from Alice Walker, look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming. Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. We're tuning in from a few places on the globe. So I'm Michael in Northern Virginia, US. And what's arising for me at the moment is joy, anticipation, and a bit of nerves. So please allow me to spend a little time on course logistics. We'll start each session after today with a 3 to 5 minute meditation, and we'll call that a short stint, followed by a state check-in, noting in a word or a few what's rising in our experience in the moment to get a sense of how we are individually and as a group arriving. I will always model that for you. Then I'll offer a 20 to 25 minute talk on the theme of the week. We'll take a 5-minute break. Then I'll guide us in a mindfulness meditation practice that aligns with the teaching. And we'll wrap up each session with a group process, 7 to 10 minutes or so, period of question and answer, and instructions for practice during the next week. Where it is helpful for me or you, I'll mark beginnings and endings with the bell. And we'll finish each meeting with a brief traditional dedication of our practice. Ring the bell one last time. And I may or may not stay in the space for 10 or 15 minutes to address unanswered questions and any private or additional conversations you might want. And I may just invite you to come into my drop-in group, which begins at 8 o'clock, and I can provide you with a link to that. Always feel free to email me or call me for any reason. And we will be recording the teaching and guided meditation sessions using Zoom as we are now. Registered students will get their own link to the video each week for reviewing for a week or so after the meetings. So some of us might wonder about best Zoom practice for our sessions. We all have our own relationships with our device, camera, and microphones. You're invited to manage those in whatever ways bring you most comfort, while beginning to feel the sense of balance and community and self-care. So I would ask that you arrive with microphones off and mute and unmute yourselves when appropriate. Unmute when prompted to speak by me or someone else in the community. And I prefer that we keep our cameras on, at least during the teaching and conversation parts of the session. Some of you might prefer to have cameras off when you meditate and need to lean or step away from the computer for a moment or two. That's fine. Please, above all, be comfortable. So I'd like to quickly read the agreements for multicultural interactions. These agreements will hopefully ensure that we have a safe, kind, respectful, balanced, and equitable participation in conversation and dialogue that may occur in future sessions, because in this session 1, I'm teaching to you on Zoom, and it's not going to be any conversation this evening unless you pop in to see me. So first of all, try it on. Be willing to try on new ideas or ways of doing things that might not be what you prefer or are familiar with. Practice self-focused. Attend to and speak about your own experiences and responses. Don't speak for a whole group or express assumptions about the experience of others. Understand the difference between intent and impact. Try to understand and acknowledge impact. Denying the impact of something said by focusing on intent is often more destructive than the initial interaction. Practice both and. When speaking, substitute and for but. This practice acknowledges and honors multiple realities. Refrain from blaming or shaming self and others. So we want to practice giving skillful feedback. Move up, move back. Encourage full participation by all present. Take note of who's speaking and who is not. If you tend to speak often, consider moving back, and vice versa. Practice mindful listening. Try to avoid planning what you'll say as you listen to others. Be willing to be surprised, to learn something new, and listen with your whole self. Confidentiality. Take home learnings, but don't identify anyone other than yourself now or later. You want to follow up with anyone regarding something they said in this session or any future sessions, ask first and respect their wishes. And finally, the right to pass. You can always say, I pass, if you don't wish to speak. Always. It's wonderful to imagine you and the full learning community, however it might evolve, as we begin our 7-week journey together. During each session, we'll learn about a particular facet of the jewel of mindfulness meditation and any related practice, with each session adding to the experience of our previous experiences to some extent. And I'm very grateful for your willingness to join me in this course. In a very real sense, we're all teachers and learners in this space. So tonight we begin to answer the question, what is mindfulness? It's a big question. The answers invite what may likely be a lifetime of exploration and discovery for some of us. I'll offer up some brief history of meditation, a few definitions, and talk about how mindfulness shows up in our constellation of ideas and practices. And hopefully have 10 minutes or so at the end to play with some questions. So a colleague and teacher of mine writes, in the 21st century, reality is becoming increasingly programmable. Patterns of information are being discovered in everything, from the atoms that make up the objects around us to the code embedded within our DNA, this amazing genetic software that writes its own hardware. And in the midst of a web of quantum relationships and interactions between observer and observed, subject and object, our inner experience, our minds are also programmable. They can be trained. And one of the most effective ways to train the mind is through the practice of meditation, training the mind to reprogram itself. So there are many ways to practice mindfulness, but what each has in common is a focus on the direct investigation of sensory experience. With mindfulness, you learn how to notice what you're sensing in real time. With mindfulness practice, you learn to tune in and recognize the patterns of experience that make up your moment-to-moment reality, including the ebb and flow of body sensations, emotions, and thoughts. Mindfulness practice is like pointing the telescope of concentration toward the direct observation of your subjective universe. As you train in mindfulness, it enables you to experience, some for the very first time, a gap between the stimulus of your experience and our response to it. As World War II camp survivor Viktor Frankl discovered, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And like Neo, who slowed down time in the Matrix to dodge bullets, we can slow down time using the power of mindfulness. Instead of dodging bullets, we're dodging the tendency to get caught up in reactive emotions and thoughts, the nightmare stories that we sometimes have trouble waking up from. So even as mindfulness frees us from the prison of our own untrained mind, it also presents new challenges and opens up new vistas. The better we get at seeing patterns of experience, the less likely we are to confuse those patterns with who and what we are. We start to see that all of these body sensations, emotions, and thoughts are objects in our experience. Therefore, they cannot be the subject who is aware of them. As a result of an increase in the subtlety of mindful attention, our normal identity, who we take ourselves to be, begins to dissolve. So this experience of dissolving can be quite disorienting and difficult. But if we're ready for it, and this is your warning, and we have the knowledge and support we need to make the transition, it can be one of the most significant transformations of our lives. As our old sense of self dissolves, an expanded sense of identity emerges. We discover we are not who we thought we were. We also find out it's totally okay, because we are incomprehensibly vast. So meditation shows up in the historical literature around the 7th and 8th centuries of the Common Age, in the Tanakh, and in other Judaic and Christian biblical narratives. In Greece, Plato and his student Plotinus fostered contemplation as leading to reaching out to or becoming the divine. Meditation appears in hymns and poems in the early Vedic texts, and meditative practices are found in the principal Upanishads and in the Pali Sutras. Gautama Buddha's first instructions on establishing mindful awareness was offered around 500 BCE, a discourse on the arousing of mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutra. And a written version was compiled from a variety of sutras around 500 years later. And I'm happy to share a translation of that sutra with those who ask. So let's begin to define mindfulness. From the science, mindfulness-based stress reduction program developer Dr. John Kabat-Zinn defined mindfulness in 1982 as an awareness that emerges by giving attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment by moment. In 2004, a clinical psychologist and researcher, Dr. Scott Bishop, added self-regulation of attention with an attitude of curiosity, openness, and acceptance to the common understanding. And from one of the world's leading mindfulness teachers who recently departed this plane, Thich Nhat Hanh, to be mindful is to be fully alive and present with the people around you, being aware of what's happening inside and around you in the present moment. And lastly, from the mindfulness-based interventions for trauma domain, it can be defined as the capacity to maintain awareness of and openness to immediate experience, including internal mental states, thoughts, feelings, memories, and impinging elements of the external world, without judgment and with acceptance. There are a variety of spectrums or domains of mindfulness practice. Close to the source, we find the historical Buddha's foundations of meditation: body, feelings, minds, and objects of mind. And then from the past 30 years of empirical research, there's the trait versus state mindfulness polarity and the body, heart, and mind trinity approach. The contemporary insight tradition teaches that there are 6 kinds of practice or ways to meditate: concentration, mindfulness, heartfulness, inquiry, awareness, and embodiment meditation. These were reverse engineered from the Buddhist meditative traditions and from secular non-denominational mindfulness techniques. On the Buddhist layer, these styles are heavily influenced by the Theravada, the Zen, and the Tibetan practice lineages. And in the non-denominational mindfulness lane, they're influenced by the pioneering work of John Kabat-Zinn and the mindfulness-based practices that have sprung up around his work. They are informed by the emerging neuroscience of meditation and by Buddhist psychology. As such, they represent some of the most time-tested and verifiably effective approaches that exist to train the mind. With these different styles, we are, as one of my teachers, Kenneth Folk, put it, performing neurosurgery on ourselves. And in the West, in the past 5 years or so, social meditation has emerged as a way to meditate. And then mixing and matching and integrating all of the above makes for a cornucopia of possible practices. And so here and now, we get to land in shared learning space to engage in systematic training in establishing mindfulness and loving kindness in practice, compassion. And we begin most simply by taking a seat with mindful presence. As students and teachers, we work with this foundation of mindfulness, then gradually extend it to other postures of standing or walking, embodying it as we work or play, and eventually integrating the theories and practices into our day-to-day experience of both our shared and solitary realities. So, mindfulness is an invitation to dignity and graciousness. It's not an onerous new obligation. It's not something you have to do, but an invitation to well-being, the possibility of true presence just where you are. And it brings visible benefits in all different aspects of life, in our physical well-being, in planning for the future, in loving and lovemaking, in raising a child, and in just being alone or together. One of my teachers, Jack Cornfield, talks about a psychotherapist friend who had a sign in his office that came from a casino in Las Vegas. And it says on it, "You must be present to win." And that's true in Las Vegas, and it's pretty much true. It's pretty much the game everywhere else. This quality of presence that we can train to gain combines two aspects. The first is awareness, a clear seeing of what's present here and now. And the other is loving kindness, a loving presence, not judging or trying to manipulate or control, but a loving care for life just as it is in the moment, from which a wise response can be born. So you could call this mindfulness by other names. Presence, loving awareness, could be called the art of living. To be present for your life, not lost in the fantasies of the future and the reruns of the past, but actually to be fully where you are. So it has a sensitivity and immediacy and aliveness to it. It's often called present moment awareness. By training this capacity of presence, you can calm and quiet the mind, open the heart, learn to see and work with the different energies of your life, and then be able to respond wisely. So how does this training start? Training in mindfulness meditation uses its own approach, not judging, not trying to change the way things are, but taking a seat in the mystery of your human experience, halfway between heaven and earth, just where you are, and allowing yourself to see and honor whatever there is to be understood. And it begins by honoring your own body. There's a line from James Joyce where he wrote of one character: "Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his butt." And we do that in our lives. When you begin to become mindful, you can notice the state of your body without judgment. Where there's tension, relaxation. Is the body exhausted or excited? Is there pain or pleasure, illness or health? You can also honor with the same non-judging or caring attention, the attention that seeks to see clearly and understand the circumstances of your life. Just as you notice the state of your body as you're sitting here, you can also notice what you are in the middle of. Sometimes difficult, and sometimes easy. One of my teachers, Emily Horn, referred to by Wired magazine as a power player of the mindfulness movement, says that mindfulness is the practice of noticing what you are sensing in real time. As we practice mindfulness, we eventually spend less time caught up in unnecessary suffering. There's less stress and greater clarity. It works by deconstructing our moment-to-moment experience, meaning as attention lands on an aspect of experience, there is a knowing, an interactive sensing of it. In this practice, we break down what we notice into different categories, such as breathing, body sensations, emotions, and thoughts, and then often note across infinite possible experiences in the moment. We learn to track what's happening moment to moment so that we're no longer lost or distracted by the content of our experience. When we're not lost or distracted, there's a sense of connection and wholeness that enables us to choose how to respond rather than acting from automatic habits, conditioned responses, which is our way. In other words, through mindfulness practice, we're unwinding habits that keep us stuck by identifying how aspects of experience, like breathing, thoughts, emotions, body sensations, how they come into form and how they're interlinked. So as we deepen our capacity for mindfulness, we're also gradually gaining insight into how our hearts and minds work, thus allowing space for greater inner freedom to arise. So my friend Brigitte began to sit in meditation. All the thoughts and worries surrounding a third and perhaps last attempt at in vitro fertilization were filling her meditation. It was a meditation on becoming a parent. Or when my daughter Anna finds that precious 20 minutes to meditate in a day full of caring for 3 toddlers, finding childcare for next shift at the brewery, while slowly healing from early childhood trauma. Those are the things that are also present for him. When my dear partner sits on her cushion at home with her aches and pains and worries about my health over the next 20 years, her suffering joys her on the meditation path. So as you sit and quiet yourself, you'll encounter what's present for you in your life just now. Sometimes you encounter the unfinished business of the heart. There's grief that you've been too busy to let yourself feel, or the tears that are there, or the longing, or the creativity that's unexpressed, or the love that you haven't given voice to. All of these are the perfect place for you to learn the power of steadying attention and loving awareness. And as you learn this capacity, it'll help you even in the hardest times. And in a moment, with a mindful pause, with just an or a view, you can shift in that space of opening to well-being. You can shift your relationship to whatever is happening and say, oh, this too. So mindfulness is not about a spiritual bypass or creating some new ideal, but the presence with your body and heart and mind for what is in your life, for your measure of pain and pleasure, of praise and blame, of joy and sorrow, gain and loss, and for the beginnings and the endings that make up a life. And this capacity of presence is a gift for yourself and a gift to all those around you. So the recently departed Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said that when the crowded Vietnamese refugee boats met with storms or pirates, if everyone aboard panicked, all would be lost. But if even one person on the boat remained calm and centered, it was enough. It showed the way for everyone to survive. And so with your own steady presence, you become that person on the boat who calms and steadies the way for yourself and for those around you. Let's take 5 minutes for self-care. This is an invitation to stand and stretch, walk for a bit, grab a fresh beverage, whatever. I'll ring the bell to bring us back into the space to practice. So let's set an intention to sit for 10 minutes for the basic mindfulness practice with breath and body. So find a sitting position that allows you to be comfortable, to be alert, spine erect but not stiff, and also relaxed, or any position that works for you. So kindly open your attention, starting exactly where you are. In the midst of it all, gently note your surroundings with your senses. Closing your eyes or softening your gaze, establishing a simple sense of presence. Now, allowing your awareness to scan through your body and wherever possible, softening and releasing obvious areas of physical tension. You might take a few very full cleansing breaths and then allow your breath to be natural. Noticing how the breath breathes itself. Bringing your attention to where you most easily detect the breath, or perhaps where it's most pleasurable. Letting this place of experiencing the breath be your home base, an anchor to the present moment. Noticing this breath right here. If you like, you can softly note in the background calm or ease with each breath. You can also whisper to yourselves, counting 1 through 10. If the breath is not a good home base for you, you might instead anchor your attention in the sensation in your hands, or the sensation of your whole body sitting here. Now, with a relaxed, interested attention, discovering what the sensations of the breath or your chosen anchor feel like, moment to moment. Mm. Mm. Where is your attention now? Each time that you notice your mind has wandered off and away from your breath, it's a moment of mindfulness. So gently bringing your attention back to the inflow and outflow of the breath, or your chosen anchor, offering a relaxed, wakeful presence. Now, scanning your body and noticing if any particular sensations are strong and calling for your attention. If so, allowing the breath or your home base to recede to the background and bringing an interested, kind presence to the sensations. What do they feel like? You might be aware of heat, chills, tingling, aching, twisting, stabbing, vibrating, with a soft, open awareness, feeling the sensations as they are, noticing, are they pleasant or unpleasant? As you begin to attend to them, do they become more intense or dissipate? Noticing how they change. When the sensations are no longer a strong experience, returning to mindfulness of breathing or your chosen anchor. So returning is the key. Return to the breath or chosen anchor 1,000 times, like training a puppy. If you find it difficult to stay with strong sensations, you might breathe with them, letting the breath help you find some balance and openness in the midst. It can also be helpful to name the sensations, seeing if there's a word to note what describes your experience, like tightness, ache, heat, pressure, itching. There's no need to strain or run through a mental thesaurus to find just the right word. Just notice what word arises in awareness and mentally repeat it to yourself in a soft tone, letting the naming, the noting, be soft in the background. 5% of your attention with 95% on the actual experience. So you might ask yourself, what's happening inside me right now? Noticing any sensations that are predominant. And then asking, can I be with this? Directly feeling the flow of sensation, subtle or strong. Letting life be just as it is. Now, returning to your home base, to the breath or anchor of particular sensations, offering a calm, steady attention. If during this last minute or so strong sensations fall your attention, letting your primary anchor recede and bringing a full attention again to what's arising, naming what you notice, offering your presence. If nothing strong is calling your attention, continuing to rest with your home base, relaxed and alert. Sensing the breath in the foreground, still aware of the field of sensations in the background. You're learning to be centered, balanced, and present for the breath and the living world of sensation, which is becoming wisely aware of this change of life. As we'll do for each of our course meetings when there are students in the space, we'll take the last minutes that we have for questions or comments that you might have for me or the community. And we'll invite you to feel free to raise your Zoom hand, your real hand, or just open your microphone and speak. While I don't have you in this space with me. Many contemplative traditions with practices, rituals, focused learning and dialogue close their meeting with a dedication practice. It's about not keeping what's good just for ourselves and our immediate circle of loved ones. It's a radical act of generosity. And there are limitless forms of dedication. I think it's a wonderful habit. So, this is one dedication that resonates well with me. Let us dedicate all the value accrued through prayer, contemplation, meditation, and practice for the benefit of all beings and to the incomparable expanse of totality. Until the next time, be well, be loved. See you soon.